Wheatley, and welcome to episode 232 of the Wheatley podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in, if you are, in fact, doing so. If you're not, you won't have heard that. It's very impromptu. It's funny, I didn't even set up the ring light, so you can see it's a different angle I'm at now and all that. Despite, if you looked at the ring light, if you just glanced at it for a second, it would leave one of those kind of fading memories on your retina. Yet it gives off no light when you're recording. It's incredible how something can be that useless. And that's the second one I own. I do have another one which I use over there sometimes in the music area, just as useless actually. But there's no way I'm spending €120 on the light. That's just not happening. But thanks for joining me. Obviously, the link for the buy me a coffee thing is in the description if you're interested in that. If you're not, you made the right choice. I have to thank everyone for contacting me last week. There was a number of people who contacted me after last week's episode. I didn't listen back to the episode, by the way, but I think I caught about 3 seconds when I was taking a photo for the advertising purposes, blah blah blah. And I could tell by the tone of my voice that I was just pissed off right throughout that episode. And I mean, the lingering feelings of what I was talking about are obviously still there, and I'm still struggling with all those things. But it's never my intention to sound annoyed and pissed off in an episode, because I don't want it to be a hard listen for anyone. But like I was saying, a number of people contacted me. I want to mention one in particular, Karen, for reaching out and talking to me about OCD and maybe some of the reasons that I was feeling a little bit flustered and a little bit. She made an interesting kind of observation, which I didn't make, or maybe wasn't in the headspace to make, or not smart enough to make, or you can choose one of the above. But it was about burnout and how the way I was sounding and the way I was talking, that I could very easily be kind of approaching a burnout, and it's something that I didn't think about. And if it was to go that far, I would be in trouble then, because then it's going right back with regards to mental health being in a poor state again, or a poorer state again, and I don't want that to be. So, Karen, I appreciate that an awful lot, and I appreciate all of the people. Tracy was another one. Sorry if I don't remember everybody, but I do remember them, obviously. But when the microphone is on, the camera's on my face, it's hard to remember. But obviously, my mum is, and everybody. Look, all right. Who else was there? There was Ross. There was Donna. There was other people. Just, so, uh, you know, another point that was made to me was about the podcast and how, like, you don't have to do it. And, if you do actually, Joanne and Karen made these observations about, like, if you do take a break, it's okay to do it. Like, nobody's, holding a gun to your head as such to do the podcast. And I do, like, I understand that totally. And to be honest, now it's like 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. I've been up since 4. I was just wide awake, and it's such a long day. And I was just thinking, will I do one this weekend and have it ready for Wednesday? And I didn't have a guest or anything organized. So I was kind of, humming and hawing about it a bit. And then I thought to myself, it would be interesting to do one about my writing and why I write and what I write about. And that's the reason the title of the podcast is Write What You Know. It's a famous saying, and people are always given that advice when they're writing fiction or non-fiction, or obviously non-fiction, but music and stuff. And I have the question mark at the end of it, because I'm never quite sure how far to go. How far have I gone? Is it a good or a bad thing? And I think I decorate my short stories quite a lot differently to my songs lyrics. I think my song lyrics are more obvious. I think people could decipher them quite quickly if they sat down and read them. But I've got a short story here that I'm going to read, and it's it was written, I'd say, about a year ago. I haven't read it out in the. I know I've read a couple out in the podcast before, but I haven't read this particular one out. Um, so I wanted to read that and talk a bit about it. And I just thought it'd be something different and something interesting because I do talk about music and not books as much, but sorry, music and films, and I'm so interested about what they're about and why people write them, and I thought it'd be interesting to kind of get into my mind. And considering when we get into the music part and the lyrics, they were all written over the past 6 months. These songs that are for the proposed album, that they're very specific to the mindset I'm in, but also like the move that I was doing. And there's probably bits and pieces of OCD in there as well, the kind of struggles with it and the anxieties and stuff of moving and that. So I just want to check behind me. I didn't scan. It could have been, there's no incriminating evidence of anything. Not that I have a bag of weed on the table or anything, but you know what I mean. You never know what's behind some people. The eagle eyed will pick things out. Um, so the story, so last time I read a story on this, I believe was about a husband and a wife breaking up, and they were having separate conversations. So the husband was in the bedroom, and I think the wife was in the kitchen, and it was kind of their point of view from either side. And I wrote that, and then I wrote this after it, and this is kind of about, I don't know, a relationship breaking down, I suppose, again. And I remember when I put up the last one, somebody mentioned about, was it about my parents? And it wasn't. But obviously, the break up of a marriage, if it is your parents, it's in your mind. But the obviously the characters aren't my parents, if you know what I mean. So it's, even though I know I didn't sit down and go, oh, I'd love to write about break up in a marriage because my parents broke up. That's obviously not what I did. But people say subconscious. That's there. That's fine. So this one is called Hands, and it's based in New Hampshire. Again, I mentioned this before about the. I'll just put my phone on silent. I mentioned this before about I tried to base ones in different states of America because I was talking about doing 50 states of America and writing one for each state, and so this is for New Hampshire. I thought it'd be interesting to do one for New Hampshire because there's nothing interesting in New Hampshire. So I squeezed this in that doesn't really rely on the state or the topography or whatever else you want to talk about with regards to states in America. So I'll just get on with it. So if I make mistakes, which I will, just skip over it. She was often described by others as extremely enthusiastic, or the life of the party, or by one friend as sparky. I guess it was just one of the reasons I bent over backwards to make her notice me. After a couple of dates where we talked endlessly and eventually sank into each other, she started to sing pop songs into my ear whenever she got close enough, as if she was sharing state secrets. She wasn't always in key, the words weren't always correct, but she always made me stir. Her speaking voice was whispery, her exhalations would tickle, making the hair stand up on my neck and arms. Fuck, I loved it. Her long fingers would entwine with my own. We'd hold hands until our palms became slick with sweat, but we didn't dare release our grips just in case this might be the last time we'd ever be able to touch. On moving in together almost a year later, we felt we had hit the jackpot. It was a rental with plenty of yard space and a connecting field that housed only opportunistic crows, their prey, and whatever else slunk around at night in the dark countryside. Domestic domesticity crept malevolently towards us. The physical space between us on the sofa stretched a little at a time. Our palms didn't get the chance to sweat as often, and she would frequently cover herself with a throw, her head only visible over the dull blue wool. She still sang, but louder now, farther away, her exhalations free to join the empty air in the room. 2 weeks after the third anniversary of our first date, we got married. We had the ceremony and reception in a five-star hotel so her father could show the 86 guests just what a pretentious ass he could be. He gave a speech that was moving at times, but in other moments a little creepy. It's nice that he loves his daughter so much, but try not to sound like you're in love with her. She looked incredible, of course. How could she not? Would our 4 week sexual abstinence topple that night? Well, yes, but more in a way of something we are expected to do. So let's get down to it. We relaxed afterwards, though, and spoke about the day that just passed before falling asleep in the glow of the neglected TV. Florida for the honeymoon, and our shoulders relaxed into it. Her father rang too often. We didn't kiss enough, but that's what marriages does, right? Sorry, that's what marriage does, right? Men always noted her arrival in a room. Eyes moved. Excuse me, turn the page. Eyes moved with her, and it increasingly riled me up. I was never jealous before, or maybe I was just more secure of my own standing in her mind. Too often now I reached for her hand and it wasn't there. The mirror revealed some grey, a few fine lines, an inflation under my chin. Had she changed? Not in appearance, at least. Maybe I needed to go on a diet. Hard when she made experimental dishes and piled the food high on my plate when I returned from work. She didn't care much for the visuals of a wife having food on the table for her man. She didn't worry too much about feminism or perceived social roles. It beats work, she'd say, as I shoveled a forkful of mush into my less than appreciative mouth. She turned to tarot cards around the fourth year of our marriage. No matter what I was doing around the house, she would approach me with a deck of cards and ask me to go through the same rigmarole every time. The death card isn't necessarily bad. A fool card isn't an insult. Be quiet and listen. All phrases that she would bleat at me. I would watch TV and drink a beer as she excessively rolled through her own readings each night, sparking anxiety and even recalling the spirited woman I fell for. Sometimes she would even slide in next to me to sing, to tempt me into her room, to fuck, but now with no protection. Maybe she saw something in those cards after all. Kids had been discussed, but had yet to be finalised. She would talk about her mother being a product of her time, cook, clean, and rear her children, putting up with the patriarchy because the fight still felt so far away. Our child in our house would bring together our divide. If this was her goal, then this is what she was going to take from me, whether those cards said it or they didn't. A fall and a winter passed. Few visitors came our way, barring her dad, her sister, and my brother. They stayed a few hours at a time, but perhaps feeling the growing void would go on their way, possibly with a sense of relief just to escape from us. She never knew exactly when to switch the heat off in the spring, so the house felt like midsummer in April. I'd kick my boots off at the door. She'd line and straighten them up, yin and yang. The tarot cards told her what to do, what to look for. The pregnancy test started to become aggressively negative. When she got sick of reading cards, she shoved them down the side of the sofa and took up crocheting. Sorry, crocheting. That's the way it's spelled. Just loop after loop, her fingers looked like hostages until something started to form, colourful, mutant. Half-formed projects lay across surfaces, usually covered in mug rings and unopened mail. We'd crawl into bed at different times, tentative, afraid that our weight on the mattress would wake the other, and thus forcing us to recognise the fading love, the lack of intimacy. We were lucky to hit once a month now. Sorry. We were lucky to hit once a month now. It was nothing adventurous either. A few minutes of digging in until one of us slid off the other. We would then wait in silence for our hearts to slow down enough for us to sleep, reassured by the white noise of the bedside fan. Some evenings I would come home to her father gushing over her latest creation, the wool lumpy in distress. He'd be taking large gulps from a second serving of coffee, two away from his minimum of five a day. His hands would shake, but he would always exclaim, "Five coffees is better than 10 cigarettes." He spoke as if he was about to give up smoking. I would make a grilled cheese or a hamburger on those nights, as her father's visits would allow her to forget to cook. I'd eat on my own. The crochet calamities had breached the kitchen walls, even the table, large balls of wool piled high next to the refrigerator. Just finished the one fucking item. Garbled conversation animated the next room. Put all of your energies into one thing. It was the way she lived. I watched TV, sometimes mowed the lawn, played Scrabble on my cell. She held the wool in her warm hands, rarely looking up, never looking at me. There was always a distraction in the background when we spoke, our egos focusing on minutiae as words slipped by. I wondered if I had imagined that her eyes were green. I called my mother in Iowa every Saturday, but we never broke the illusion of her togetherness, or in this case, our coming apart. I couldn't talk to good friends about it, as I may as well hurl my masculinity off a cliff. The majority of my energies were dormant. The last bit I had to give went on our one time every month trysts. She burned through her energies before each creation was even finished. Something inside her demanded the next one, something more flamboyant, more garish. Her work was improving, though. More materials landed on her door each month, heavier and heavier. Fall came, a heavy rain and a dampness that could hollow out your chest. One night I fell asleep on the sofa and woke up covered in 3 stages of creation. I welled up the fact I missed the affection I could have witnessed firsthand. I stayed under the makeshift blanket. 2 days later, a package had arrived. 3 large canvases, 2 oil paint sets, and one how-to on landscape art. We could both kiss the wool goodbye. Was there still love between us now? I'm not sure. We'd eat together sometimes and reel off the inconsequential moments of her day. She mentioned the artist she'd been gravitating towards in her online research. She unveiled her latest passions, smeared on blindingly bright canvas. She picked at the dry paint on her fingernails. All I could do in return was talk about, excuse me, paper's very dry, isn't it? Was talk about non-events at work, sometimes throwing in a little white lie to spruce things up. I started a workout routine in the basement every evening to escape the boredom and the smell of paint. Lifting and dropping heavy things is not my idea of a good time, but I literally couldn't think of anything else to do. It was the morning of her 34th birthday when her dad's truck rolled up with a trailer in tow. He led her outside and with practice ceremony opened the back and led a brown donkey out by the reins. She was joyous, emotional. The trio walked into the field together as I was instructed to carry a heavy trough, followed by a bale of hay and a bucket, and set them down close to the fence. I hadn't seen her this excited in years. All of those hobbies put together didn't equal this. He would be called Bertie. She walked next to him for hours, well after her father left and lights slipped away. I made her dinner to celebrate the day, but she ate with agitation, eager to be back outside with him. I washed up as she stood in the fence. She watched on as if it was her very own personal wildlife series. Every so often he would circle back around to her and she'd feed him a carrot from those small soft hands of hers. Her last painting was a Bertie, everything out of proportion and slightly nightmarish, but it hung from the wall behind the TV. One day the paints and canvas, the next day they disappeared, leaving behind only colourful blotches and dust bunnies. Fucking Bertie, that's all I heard about now. Every move that donkey made was documented in the day and memorialized about it in the evenings. Oh, I feign enthusiasm or at least interest at the beginnings, but how can the same banalities excite someone so much? Donkeys don't do anything. They tilt their head and look gormless. Was I jealous? Maybe a little. She used to admire me in this way. I can handle being eclipsed by some wool or paint, but not one of the dumbest of the dumber animals on earth. She would come in from the pouring rain, her top half safely kept dry by the umbrella, but her bottom half and boots soaked through. She smelled like him, a waft of wet mane lingering around the house for the night, the soap she used only complementing the dankness. Her dad would arrive, happily accepting more pats on the back from her for getting her outdoors again, for introducing Bertie into our lives, yes, ours, for granting her a gift that she truly loved. If I had asked her then if she loved me, she may have been on the fence. She may even have said no. The three of them would stroll about, three living entities who understood each other, had a connection, had a love between them. I lifted heavy things in the basement, rudderless, like a satellite out there alone, circling the earth. Excuse me. I went on. It went on. Seasons melted. A small barn went up where he would sit pretty as soggy hay was handed to him from those precious hands. 4 months was now our longest dry spell, the pattern broken only by too much alcohol and a rare deep conversation about the first few times we fumbled towards something called sex all those years ago. I imagined her lying under me, wondering if Bertie was all right in the dark field next to us. Did she feel obligated? Would 3 times a year be sufficient going forward? I climbed off the bed, relieved to have reset the clock. Another run was just beginning. She took a shower and drank a coke by the window. It was too bright in the room to see anything except her reflection, but she seemed intent on seeing through the pain regardless. I sat on the couch, drunk, my heart slowing. She said goodnight. I waited maybe an hour, turned off the TV. I checked in on her, heavy breathing, wrapped tight in a light sheet. Her dad was adamant about protection in the countryside. Light plumes of breath rose into the night air. I shone the torch. He usually approached the light. I climbed the fence and walked to the farthest corner of the field from the house before he showed himself. He came to me slowly, a different pace to how he would move to her. I didn't pat him. I just laid the torch down, lifted the gun to where his eyes met and pulled the trigger. A misty red plume crossed the light stream. A stagger, another, and a heavy thud. I heard the air leave his body as he landed. I grabbed the torch and left it on the barn floor next to the gun. I walked into the kitchen, put on a pot of coffee. She was still sleeping. I sat and waited for her to make the discovery. The end. Sorry for all the animal lovers out there. It's it's an interesting one. Looking back at it now, in the sense that so only I think 3 people have read it, but when I was writing about it, I wanted it to be about um a man feeling not just like not just about losing his wife, but losing love and feeling he was losing his masculinity because he was seems to be driven by sex and by intimacy and his holding his wife's hand and all this kind of stuff. Um, and that's the way I kind of wrote it as. And then I wanted it to be to him to do something brutal. I didn't want him to kill the wife, but do something brutal. And I had this kind of thing where I was like, I can't have him killing a dog because people love dogs, and I can't have him killing a horse because people love horses. But then when I wrote it as a donkey, I was like, who doesn't like donkeys? And the worst thing is my granddad loves donkeys, so I hope he doesn't read this or listen to this podcast, I should say. But my mom then made this observation that the wife was clearly depressed because she was trying to find a solution for her depression. Excuse me. And that she was going through different um hobbies or pastimes. And it's something I didn't think about. And I kind of that's what was weird then, because then did I mean that like subconsciously, obviously, because I didn't mean it consciously? Or was it just my mom's reading of it that the wife in the character had to was really struggling to at the same time, and obviously because I was writing from the man's point of view that I didn't get into that side of things. So I've been broken up with before, um, and I've gone through the kind of like longer relationships where it kind of starts to kind of come apart for different reasons, and maybe you do start to drift a little bit, and start hanging out with your friends more than you were a few months before. So all that was to it, but the kind of final act was I wanted it to be kind of really cruel, and almost like that the husband knew deep down that if he did that, there was no going back, but he did it anyway. And maybe he, in a way, wanted out of it because he was losing his masculinity, and he wasn't getting, love from his wife. And, there was a kind of a shallowness to him because of that. And he wasn't the kind of guy who'd step up and have a conversation and try and repair a relationship. He was just counting the amount of times that they had sex with each other as three a year is not enough, but if we do it like once a month, and we maybe that kind of. So I don't know. I do like that story, by the way. I don't like all my stories, but there's a certain few. I think I've read. I'm not too sure. Excuse me for a second. I'll turn my back. Sorry about that. So the other two I read out I really like as well, but there's other that need work, but I'm not very good at edits. So I tend to write freehand, type it up, it's done. Two draft under, that's what I am. So, I realize that my stories are quite somber, which the person who was for the people who have listened to this podcast from the beginning or for a while will not be shocked by that kind of statement. But I think I live in that side of things where things are a little bit more difficult. But I think I'm also inspired by writers who write like that. Cormac McCarthy and Ray McCarver, and the kind of when they write about the difficulties in relationships rather than um the lovey-dovey side of things. And I've never been into reading that kind of stuff, so it makes sense that I would. So that's the story. So the stories are, some will say that, oh, there's connection there and stuff, and there obviously is. But with the lyrics, I think it's a bit different. So I kind of was looking back on this today, and every so often I'll put them up online and stuff. But people, if they're just listen to the song, they might necessarily pay as much attention to the lyrics. So um, you might notice there's a theme of about three or four songs that are about the move or being told they had to move and being kind of angry about that. Um, and with that topic, I think I don't want to go too personal on it with how it went down with my landlady and that, because um I was pissed off and I didn't want it to happen, and I wasn't happy for about a year before that because circumstances had changed in the house, and I was just kind of like because I was a lodger, I just had to put up with it, like, and that's fair enough, like, because I was a lodger, didn't own the house, but I was annoyed about it. And so they came out. It came out in song, like a good old fashioned musical. But so I want to read one before I get into that. So this is probably so this was written around the time where I was seeing someone for a couple of months. It wasn't a long term thing, and they kind of had enough, and I was like, um, not up, like, not devastated. I'll put it this way: nice person, but I was over it the next day, and I'm sure they were over it the next day too. So I wrote this song in a kind of response, but in a way that was a bit tongue in cheek because it wasn't as serious as, I'm letting on to be about this relationship and stuff. So when I start singing the song, it sounds like I'm really like, pissed off about all that had gone on. But it becomes, as it goes along, it's kind of silly and funny and whatever. And I wrote this like from start to finish, like in whatever, 20 minutes, half an hour. And I thought, right, I don't need to do anything more of that. And when you get one like that, it is very pleasing because sometimes to go back after you're in a certain headspace, more with lyrics now than music, but you're in a certain headspace, and then you come back a week later and maybe you're sadder or you're happier or whatever, and then they don't match up, and then that's quite difficult. And you try and turn it into a different song or whatever. So you'll see the kind of difference. What I mean, that it's like probably my most jokey song, even though it's not jokey. It's not Flight of the Conchords level of jokes, but or Tenacious D or something like that. So the first line sounds like I'm really devastated. So I need you off my sheets, tear them up and throw them in the sheets. I'm forgiving, but not often. I can't get used to me, sullen, grumpy, and maybe even sweet. It's been said, but not often. So I've already added in a little bit of a joker. I think this is my Bob Dylan kind of ode to Bob Dylan, maybe. Because when you hear it, I don't know if I've put it up. By the way, I have a new YouTube channel. It's called Derek Wheatley Music. If you go over there, you're going to see all these original songs. There's 6 or 7 up already. Um, you turned it back on me. I'm out here struggling under your sharp knee. I'm sleeping, but not often. The girl, but I hope no one's offended that I'm saying this. The girl's not going to listen to this, by the way. There's no chance. But I'm not slagging her off. But I have knobbly knees, but she literally had sharp knees, so that's why it says sharp knee. Sorry. Um, and then I make some stuff up then. So I'd say, well, here's one of your quotes. You couldn't find your fingers from your toes. I've been searching, but not often. And you're singing the right notes, but it ain't fun. It ain't happiness. And we line up in a row. It's just a joke, just a narrow miss. So again, that's a kind of little dig at the whole idea of like stuck in a relationship that no neither people are happy. Like the story. So it all links together. Um I made a modern tweak. Friends are friends. You cope or just stay weak. Here's my hand. It's an offer. So I kind of chain it from it, but not often to it's an offer. Then in the next few verses, while I don't write the book, I took it down and had myself a look. It's no deal, it's an offer. Can you count the cost? I tried it once and I'm still a little lost. Not just words, it's an offer. Were you ever wrong? Keep it short. We've gone on way too long. What is that? It's an offer. Now, that line, were you ever wrong, has been said to me a number of times in an aggressive manner. Um, because obviously I have, but sometimes you play up a little, don't you? Like, I'm never wrong. When you're in an argument and they're right and you're wrong, and you say I'm never wrong and stuff. My dad listens to this, and I know he probably feels like that, like he's never wrong. Um, but then there's one the bridge is like me kind of talking so about poetry so much. I don't write poems, but I write songs, and some people say they're similar. But the bridge is like turn on your radio, hear my poetry, turn off your radio so you don't hear my poetry. So it's basically a little jibe myself. So it's not all about another person, it's about me, and I don't mind having a bit of laugh at myself. Um so that's the kind of it I like if I sang that excuse me, if I sang that with that person in the room, this person's from a while back, so don't worry. Um, they still wouldn't know it was about them. So I would never be like, well, maybe she knows she has sharp knees, or I don't know, maybe she doesn't. But she might she might recognize it from the sharp knees. Uh, could she like she didn't even say were you ever wrong, but other people have said it. Um, So that was kind of one where you want to write about a certain situation that just happened to you, and you're kind of not devastated about it, so you can add some like you know a bit something a bit jovial into it, so it's not as heavy. Um, so I was trying to figure out. So a few years ago, many years ago, actually, I don't know if I told this story. So I was standing outside. Did I tell this story on the podcast before? I might have. I was standing outside a pub in at the college there, and I was my girlfriend at the time was in the pub, and I couldn't get in unless she came out because yeah, the student had to have student was allowed one guest, and I was going to be the guest. So I was, it was like mobile for all the people out there. Mobile phones did exist at the time, but they were crap, and the reception was never great, and all that blah blah blah. So I was trying to get in touch with her. So I'm standing outside, and um, a €50 note. Euros were relatively new at that stage. Actually, a €50 note literally just came along, just floated towards me along the ground. It's like like a piece of litter. And I stood on it, and I looked around, and there was nobody within my eye line. There was people behind me up a step, up a set of steps leading into the pub. They were queuing up to get in, and I was standing like down, and I thought, well, I'll just pick this up and see if anybody's kind of screaming about a 50 missing. And then about a minute later, another one comes floating down. Exactly the same route, exactly the same along the path. And I put my foot on it, and I pick it up. And at that time, €100, €100, like, €100 now is good, but €100 then was class. Like, we were going drinking. So it was like, definitely get you going for the night or whatever. And yeah, eventually she came out, and we didn't go in. For some reason, I couldn't get in, or she'd brought someone else in and I couldn't go. So we went into town with the money, like, but I'd never written about it, or, I'd never really told anyone. I still feel a bit guilty, but what you want to do, I'm out of college, and put the 250s in the air, say anybody lose to 50, €100, and 100 people that would have lost it. Um, so look, it was a bit of luck for me. So I started a song called Right Place, and it was called, and it doesn't mean anything to anyone if they don't hear the story, but it's, so how was your day? Well, 50 floated on the ground to me. And what did you say? Well, nothing. It happened suddenly. So that's like just the verse from that kind of happening. I'm not going to read all the lyrics of that, because there's nothing really for anything else for like worthwhile, I suppose, to the story. But I just thought, like, that's one of those occasions when I did write what I knew about this story of getting a lot of money for doing nothing, essentially just being in the right place. I was going to call it right place, right time, but it's a bit too much, so I just put right place instead. Um, and then the kind of, it turns out that there seems to be a trilogy of songs about being asked to, or leaving the house, or being asked to leave. Um, and the subject and the theme of the song is that, and then there's other lines you have to fit in certain rhymes and whatever. Um, to fit the melody. So it's not all about it. So there's one called Avalanche, which I'm quite proud of Avalanche, and I've played it before on Instagram or something. It's a piano led song. Um, so it goes. She tried to mask it true, wanted applause in every room. Actually, this isn't about that at all, is it? This might be about the girl I was talking about. What's it? I don't know what this. No, forget it. Forget this one. We'll pass on to the next one. So yeah, okay, this is the one. So I just want my house back. This is what this is called. This is what was said to me by my landlady. I was, whatever about being asked to move out and stuff. That's fine. It's her house. I understood it. But when she said I just want my house back, it bothered me. Don't worry, she's not going to listen to this podcast. She's never listened to a single one of them, and it really bothered me. And the fact that I was holding it hostage or something, or that like the 15 years of all the stuff that I had done in the house were um just worthless or whatever. That line in particular kind of annoyed me. So I wasn't going to write this. I wasn't going to put that as a title, but who cares? And again, I played this before. So so it goes like this. There's no rush, there's no push. I just want this place to myself again. All that time we're a team, sent out to the shed where all the dead things go. I run it. I'd run until my ankles break just to make the space. Um, there goes those years, all a blitz of nothing, of nothing. Sorry, there's a line there. I don't know what it's doing there. Um, some days pass and I'm stunned. I hide out in my room now. Where's my keys? Shut the door. 15 years pass and then they're all gone. Say goodbye to the place. We leave it on bad terms now. Feed her up, you reclaim. Within 6 feet, not welcome. Then there's a bridge, or maybe this is the chorus. Oh, it's for the best. You'll remember the person you used to be. You build yourself a nest, shelter from those unkind words. What have you done? So that's kind of like a little bit that the title is very obvious, but some of the other bits wouldn't be unless you were in that situation, you know. Um, I'm probably going to take a bit about this. We'll go out to the shed to watch where the dead things go. I think it's a bit over the top, a bit dramatic. Um, excuse me now while I find the other one. So there's actually maybe I'll break it up. Maybe I'll read this one out and then I'll go back to that one. Um, so this one is not your Superman. This came about in my mind when I was um about 20. No, sorry, it didn't come about my mind. It came about my mind now. But when I was 25 or so, I was caught up in a relationship thing with but it wasn't a relationship obviously, but let's just say they were not single, and it's not my proudest achievement. But the idea of being told, some people will be able to relate to this, some people won't, and hopefully you won't. But being told that you're number two, but like kind of being called upon when needed. And I thought it'd be funny to write a song with Superman in it because I don't like any of those silly superhero films. So I thought it'd be good. Let's put that in, but it's called Not Your Superman. So who's lost their way? They can't refer to us. Let it be what they may. I'm just another captive. They'll run through you without looking backwards. Now it's past the point, a tilt on the axis. And then the chorus is, I'm not your Superman, no, no. Won't come when you call me. I'm not your Superman, no, no. Philosophize envy. And the third chorus is about something else entirely, but something that kind of makes me a little bit kind of I don't know, sad, I guess. But it's not about me. Um, he won't come there with you. A sacrifice he won't choose to make. Stand there in your sadness, a breath away from losing taste. I'm a big fan of "Stand There in Your Sadness" as a lyric. And then this is the bit about the house then again. So you see, like the Not Your Superman's just about that thing from years and years ago, but this is about the house. So the bridge is, she calls him baby, the shower beneath me. I wasn't ready for this love. So she called him baby. My landlady called her parent baby, and it made me, yeah, because you're in your 40s, you know what I mean? They shower beneath me. The toilet or the bathroom was just beneath the room that I used to sit and watch TV, and every night they showered together. Ugh. And then I wasn't ready for this love is a kind of the allusion to the idea of I wasn't ready to move out, rather than, their love was what the reason I moved out or was asked to move out and stuff. So you get all these kind of little references thrown together, and I quite like them. Another little line here about moving out. Scheming in your sleep, got a bag full of belongings tied to my feet. That's another one that was kind of like me just feeling as like when I was leaving that I was dragging everything behind me, and the overwhelming sensation of it all. Um, I wrote a song called "It's All Wonderful" when everything clearly wasn't wonderful, which I got right. I do like the idea of writing a lyric or a title and it being completely opposite of what the song is about. Um, so it goes, I hold her up again, betray the lies until the yellow embers start to go fade out. Catastrophes can wait, token gestures saved. We're not about to let you down there now. And the chorus is, put your foot down when I say we're heading for a wall. That's about me driving my driving lessons. Um, literally, Paul, Karen's husband, actually, about I had this thing in my head of like if Paul tells me to do something, I do it, and if the idea if I was losing my anxiety was getting too much for me. This is back when I was just starting out, by the way. Um, that if he just tells me to do something, I'm just going to do it. So it's put your foot down when I say we're heading for a wall. Feelings giving, but others frayed. No uplift here at all. Fake missions for one's faith. Find answers on delay. Seems when it all just starts to turn, burn down. And then the bridge is just to say it's all just wonderful, and it's kind of done in a the kind of distressed vocal, as if like I'm kind of coming apart a little bit, and I like the idea of it. But I wrote something about what was it? Yeah, heavily under is the name of a song. Is it? I don't know if it is or not. I'll read out my slow burn was probably be my best lyrics for a while anyway. Um, so slow burn mentions no, not slow burn, heavily under. Oh, here it is. So I'm not going to read it all out, but um, so when I get some days and it hits about 3 o'clock, I get really tired, but I get up early and all that, and I realize that. But I get so kind of wrecked and kind of zombified for about an hour, and then I'll snap out of it. Sometimes I fall asleep, excuse me, and I don't want to because I want to sleep at night. But um, so I wrote like so there's a little bit of a chorus goes fall out, no doubt, my eyelids falling down, sick of being drugged out. Um, and then I wrote a song called Medicine, which was probably about 6 years ago, which again is about it. So it goes, my mother said this would be hard, but I was not prepared for this. When I was lost, you wouldn't tell, beaten down, feeling unwell. I paint myself into the room, which is a reference to, I read about Sid Barrett, who was sadly, he was a member of Pink Floyd from the start, but he was an LSD kind of casualty, and he left Pink Floyd. But one day he painted himself into a corner like of his house, and he stayed there until the paint dried. Because that he's just in mind was gone. So I paint myself into the room. I'm not sure people can be true. Bustle your way into your life. What's been is gone. Turn out the lights. Medicine, watch you drown. Disappointed, coming down. When you screamed, I found my voice. Tick one box, make your choice. I've been a loser for a while. Then you stopped and hit redial. Medicine, watch you drown. Flood your senses, coming down. And I mean, it's pretty obvious what it's about, obviously, before I even tell you. It's called Medicine. But sometimes I get that kind of still feelings of shame at times that I need to be boosted up by um drugs, and I mean prescription drugs now, not the illegal sort. But probably the best one I think is more than likely. I hope this isn't too boring for you, by the way. Is more than likely the song I wrote. That's probably the best song I've written. I should say, song I wrote. It's called Slowburn for now, but it's not going to be called Slowburn. Um, the first line is probably the best, and then it goes downhill. No, it doesn't. It's a good. So it's wood bends until it splinters you. You watch as days end, as ghostly figures move. On top of this weight, a task of subtle use, and don't be a martyr of your views. Distance is not the only way to tell you when to give up your chance and stay. One hand won't cut it. We need it all in place, and don't give up morals for your grace. And the chorus is stood out in fields to get you to feel what is wrong. Strung out on sleep, gone in too deep, it's not much fun. Swallowing deals pressed up as steals, what is known. Sorry. Swallowing deals dressed up as steals, what is known. And then we go back to the verse. It's we lay right on the edge of space. To find us floating would be a shameful waste. We're burning candles in hopes you'll see the flames, and don't take your eyes off of your aim. And then there's a bridge. It just says choose your side to meddle twice. Then it says, and they all come along. They all coming along goes back into the chorus. But if you hear the song, I actually put it up today um, on the YouTube channel, the music one, and it's probably my favorite one. It's the hardest to sing though because it's got um, extended notes. So every time you get to the first line of two lines, you got an extended part. So if you forget to take your breath at the right time, you start to run out. And I think in the demo one that I put up, I think I do lose out. I definitely mess up lyrics at some point. But I really like I said, wood bends until it splinters you is nice, and we're burning candles and hope you see the flames is quite nice as well. Um, and I even mentioned The Edge of Space, which I have no interest in. But I do like it, and it's going to be good when it's fully recorded, or what it sounds like in my head. So that's kind of basically what writing about what I know, isn't it? But covering it up a little bit. Apart from me telling you here right now what some of them are about. Um, but also just writing to fill, like I said, melodies or lines. And when you're reading out lyrics and they don't rhyme, you're kind of thinking, oh, that doesn't sound right. But then when you sing it, it makes a lot more sense. So I think people think poems or lyrics have to rhyme, and it's not necessarily the case because they go off in different directions, especially at the end of like a verse that's going to go into a bridge or a chorus. It's not really that important. Well, for me, it's not really that important to write a line or a word that rhymes with the word two lines before that. So and like I've always found, I think lyrics have always been more important to me because I've found it easier to write them than to write music or melodies. But up until recently, and I mentioned this probably a couple of months ago on here, that I'm getting more comfortable with writing melodies. So I don't know if the lyrics are taking as much of an importance in my head. But then when I talk about it on a podcast like this, I kind of think, well, that they probably still mean more to me than the music in the sense that I can refer back to a part of my life that it's about, or something that I've done with my life. And, you know, like being able to blend, like, leaving the house you lived in for 15 years with a girl that broke up with you about a year ago, with the, like all this kind of stuff comes into play, and you've got this kind of idea in your mind that it's gonna, yeah, that it works. So um maybe it is good to write about what you know, but at the same time not be stuck to it, go outside the box every so often. Um so I've been seriously procrastinating with the album because I don't know, just obviously it wasn't, not, the whole OCD thing has taken a lot out of me. I'm doing a bit more work now, and there's the podcast and all that. So I finally downloaded the software last Saturday. So now I kind of have no excuse. But I was messing around with it today just before I recorded, before I press record on this. So it's complicated enough. So it'll take me a little bit of time to learn that part, learn the actual recording part. But once I do and just get them down and not be worried about what people think about them, just put them out, and then maybe do something about recording, or sorry, playing live some pub or other. Surely somebody will take me in. Um, and I've got 12, the kind of bare bones of 12 songs, so I feel okay about that. Uh, I was on my 10th. I have to add this in. I was on my 10th driving lesson, and it seconded in the automatic with Paul. He has said that I've improved an awful lot. I have said I will look after Karen's car. But I made a couple of mistakes with regards to road positioning when I was going around the roundabout, that kind of stuff. And like as he said, I shouldn't be getting those wrong now after 10 lessons, and he's dead right. But I'm making less mistakes for sure, and I'm more confident, and you know, just happy that I have the option. I had the option to go to automatic, and Paul mentioned it in the first place and said that I could, do it if I was struggling, and we both agreed that I was struggling with the manual, and it's happy days. But the last thing I want to say, I'm kind of toying around with the idea of no more YouTube video. Um, the reason, because some guests I think are a little bit wary about doing the video rather than just the audio. Also, that if I record solo ones like this, I can actually add in music and um little bits and pieces, edit stuff in that, if I'm talking about a podcast, doing a solo one about music, I can actually add stuff in so people know what I'm talking about. Because sometimes I'm just talking about stuff, and some people won't have any reference points whatsoever to it. So I'm thinking about just going back to, like, I mean, taking out YouTube altogether, in the sense of, the way before, I think it was before episode 45, I always had YouTube, but I just had the audio and I just had the picture of the podcast up. like getting rid of it all and just having it on Spotify and Apple. And if people want to listen to it over there, they can, and maybe doing it that way. But it's just an idea I had during the week. But that was when I wanted to obliterate everything. So who knows? That might be just a passing thing. Hopefully we will have a guest next week, which will be nice. Thanks for obviously very much for putting up with me this week and just listening to me talk about my songs and my story, and hopefully making you think, wow, isn't he very talented? Um, Thanks very much to John for the YouTube side of things. Thanks to my mom, my dad, my granddad, Jaron Calvin. We are on YouTube, obviously. Subscribe if you would, for what it's worth now. I know many missing. Instagram and Facebook. And the usual podcast platforms. We have Anchor, Spotify, Apple, whatever the other ones, Podbean, the other ones that people use. Um, like I said, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you have a good week, and yeah, see you next week. Bye.